supply chain,
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 Supply Chain Management with GDP Season 2, and this time it's bigger and it's better. We will pick up from where we left off and continue to discuss industry best practices, current affairs, effective leadership, and the latest innovations in the world of supply chain. The podcast is aimed at explaining the concepts of supply chain in the leanest way possible, one of the most efficient shows where you will listen to me covering through various important topics across the supply chain domain. I'm your host, Gagandeep Prabhu, currently working at Ernst & Young in their supply chain and operations consulting practice. So let's just jump right into it then. Hey. Welcome to another episode of Supply Chain Management with GDP. Before we kick in, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all my listeners for that wonderful response on the first episode of the second season. I am truly honored and grateful for all the support that I've received over the last few days. So thank you, everyone. So let's just jump right in to the topic for today, that is NPI versus sustaining programs. Now, NPI stands for New Product Introduction. And what does this mean? So a new product introduction is a sort of a systematic process of taking a product from an ideated stage through research and development and launching it into the mass market. That is, NPI generally consists of several phases depending on the product stage. Now, typically in the industry, NPI is said to have 8 different stages. Now, stage 1 consists of product idea and concept. Stage 2 consists of market research. Stage 3 is design and development of the product. Stage 4 is the pre-production and prototyping. Stage 5 is manufacturing. Stage 6 is product launch. Stage 7 is mass production. And stage 8 is innovation and improvement post-launch. So, when we talk about stage 1, the product idea and concept, it's generally where the team members come together to brainstorm or whiteboard a potential idea, depending on whether it's a gap in your product that you see or you see an opportunity in the market. Stage 2 is where in market research you actually go in and understand whether the product has the potential to be successful, whether it's actually needed, whether it will give you profit or will it actually generate revenue, and also do different kinds of research depending on demographics, on age, interests, etc. Now, when it comes to stage 3, that is the design and development of a product, you would generally try to go through models of design, through their dimensions and characteristics of the product. You would go through technical drawings and details of the material needed for, production of the goods. For stage 4, which is pre-production and prototyping, a MVP is produced. Now, this is a very common term used across industry. An MVP is a minimum viable product. And an MVP is created in this stage of the NPI, which checks if the design is up to standards when made, or if the product is actually what they were looking to implement when they were in the product idea and concept stage. Once an MVP is approved, you would go into stage 5, which is manufacturing. When the product is ready for the market, it's time to begin to manufacture the product. During this stage, the factories start making the product to the specification of the design. You ensure that the demand forecasts are in, and you ensure that you are ready to launch once the product has been manufactured. Now, stage 6 is where you launch the product. To ensure scalability and smooth operation, it is critical to continue to conduct due diligence across the supply chain for your product so that the component and parts required for the production of your product do not encounter delays. For example, let's say if you're using chips in your product, lead times can go up to 50 weeks or 100 weeks during this pandemic stage. So it is important that you accurately forecast before your product launch so that you know what is going to hit you and at what time and how much of the product can you actually get out into the market. Stage 7 is mass production. Once you've decided on your launch date, you know what is happening, when the product is coming out, you go into mass production. Ensure that all your products, your forecasts, everything loaded in based on what your demand looks like over the next 13 weeks, 26 weeks, you start producing these products out. And lastly is innovation and improvement post-launch. For an NPI program, it doesn't stop at this stage. That is that you don't stop innovating after you launch a product. No, you start looking at opportunities to improve the product further. You start looking at how can you make changes or updates or maybe even software updates to your product once it's been rolled out. Now, this ties in very strongly with the fact of sustaining programs. Now, what is sustaining programs? Once an NPI program has been launched and it's successfully been running for a few weeks or months, the program is moved over to a sustaining program. This means the product will continue to sell, you'll continue to manufacture these products, but you need someone to constantly program manage this. Generally, like sustaining program managers who are responsible for this take care of an end-to-end cycle of this product from all the way from taking over from when it was an NPI program to its end of life. As a program manager who's in sustaining, you will generally influence like product manufacturability, testability, and the supply chain response over this period of time until the product is alive. And good example of both of these concepts tied together would be an Apple iPhone that everyone has currently. An NPI program would be the new iPhone 14, which is about to release soon, where teams have been working on it for maybe over the last 1 year or maybe even 2 years, where they have been thinking about how do they go about the iPhone 14? What are the new features they're going to bring in? What are the different new innovations they're going to bring in? How do they manufacture this, etc.? And a sustaining part of that would be the iPhone 13 or the iPhone 12, which is in market. And how do they constantly keep manufacturing this, enable this for the consumers that are out there? Another good example is Seqirus for the influenza vaccines, where every year they go about the research of ensuring that new flu vaccines based on the newer strains is produced. But they also have to ensure that they are sustaining the influenza vaccines once it's out and once it's in the market. That was a good run through of what an NPI program is, what is a new product introduction, and what is sustaining program. I hope that was helpful. And also subscribe to Supply Chain with GDP so that we can discuss about such further topics in the upcoming episodes. Thank you all. Hope you have a good day ahead. And thank you for tuning in to Supply Chain with GDP.